In a quiet, peaceful village nestled among gentle hills and vast green fields, there lived an old man named Haran. Once a wise and successful merchant, he had retired and now spent most of his days sitting under the large banyan tree in front of his house, quietly watching life go by. Haran lived with his son, Ravi, who had taken over the family business. Ravi was a hard-working and ambitious young man, but he had one weakness. He was too easily influenced by others. Instead of trusting his own instincts, he often followed what the villagers told him, believing the majority was always right. Haran didn't say much, but he silently observed and waited for the right moment to teach his son the most important lesson he had ever learned: that wisdom doesn't lie in hearing many voices, but in discerning and daring to decide for oneself. And under the old banyan tree, the story of two generations slowly unfolded through silence and understanding. Ravi, full of youthful energy, strived to maintain and grow the business his father had left him. However, despite his efforts and dedication, Ravi often wavered in the face of advice from those around him. He believed that if many people said the same thing, it must surely be true. Whenever a decision had to be made, he would ask his neighbors, friends, and even strangers in the village. If someone said a certain product would sell well, Ravi would immediately adjust his business plans without verifying or thinking it through. He believed that following the crowd was the safest path. His father, old Haran, watched his son with a gaze full of both concern and understanding. He had once been like Ravi, thinking the crowd always had the right answers. But time and experience had taught him that if you keep letting others steer your sails, you will never learn to navigate the ship of your life. One afternoon, Ravi stormed into the house, his face tense and anxious. He paced around the yard, fists clenched, eyes full of disappointment. "Father," Ravi said loudly, "I heard the villagers say velvet would soar in price, and anyone who invested early would win big. I poured all our money into it, but now the market has crashed. I've lost almost everything." Haran looked up at his son and smiled calmly. He did not scold, only gently pointed to the banyan tree outside. "Come sit with me," he said. Though still upset, Ravi quietly walked over and sat beside his father. Silence filled the air, broken only by the rustling leaves. Haran looked to the sky, where a flock of birds shifted direction with the wind. "You know," he said slowly, "sometimes chasing rumors only makes us fly in circles, never reaching our true destination." Ravi remained quiet, his heart beginning to calm. Haran looked at his son sitting silently under the banyan tree, then began to tell an old tale. Long ago, in a far-off village, there lived a young farmer named Aaron. He owned good land, capable of growing any crop. But Aaron didn't trust his own choices. One day, a neighbor told him corn would sell for the highest price that year. Aaron listened and planted corn. Weeks later, someone else said, "Green beans are wiser to grow. Everyone is doing it." Fearing he'd fall behind, Aaron dug up the corn and switched to beans. Less than a month passed, and another villager claimed barley would bring true profit. Aaron once again plowed the field and changed his crop. But because he kept changing, nothing had time to grow roots. By harvest season, the land was dry, and his barn was empty. Haran turned to Ravi. "Do you see?" Aaron listened to everyone but himself. And so, he ended up with nothing. Ravi bowed his head, beginning to understand what his father meant. After finishing the story, Haran placed a hand on Ravi's shoulder and spoke gently. "Advice is valuable, my son. It can come from anyone, family, friends, or even strangers. But no matter how much you hear, the final choice must be yours." Ravi looked up, still unsure. "But what if they know more than I do? What if they're more experienced?" Haran nodded. "Yes, others may have insight and see things you don't. But if you let yourself be pulled in every direction, you will lose your way. No ship ever reaches shore by changing course every day. He pointed to the deep roots of the banyan tree. The tree stands firm not because it ignores the wind, but because it knows where its roots lie. Ravi sat still. In that moment, he understood that maturity isn't about listening to more, but choosing wisely what to believe. After that conversation beneath the banyan tree, Ravi began to change. He still listened to those around him, but no longer followed impulsively. Every piece of advice and information was carefully considered against his own judgment before making a decision. When the villagers buzzed about investing in linen, Ravi didn't rush. He studied the market, watched trends, and acted only when he felt sure. That time, he succeeded. And though not every decision was perfect, Ravi learned to steer his own course, no longer swept away by the crowd. Haran watched his son's growth with pride. He knew Ravi had become not just a better businessman, but a steadier man. Under the shade of the old banyan tree, where once stories were told, now rested a silence full of meaning. For some lessons never need repeating, only remembering. From the day he learned the value of self-reflection, Ravi began to transform. No longer the impulsive youth swayed by every opinion, he became calm, thoughtful, and wise in every choice he made. He still listened, for he understood knowledge could come from anywhere, but he no longer let himself be swept away by the noisy tide of conflicting advice. Ravi learned to listen with a discerning heart and decide with a steady mind. Because of that, his business flourished, as solid as the man he had become. The villagers no longer offered Ravi advice, but came to him for guidance. They saw in his eyes a quiet strength, eyes that had once been lost but now saw clearly. And Haran, the quiet old father, smiled each time he watched his son walk across the yard. Beneath the ancient banyan tree, he no longer needed to say a word, for he knew the seed of wisdom, once rooted, would grow into a tree on its own.